Tonight on News 5 Live, a firestorm in the wake of inflammatory and vile comments made by Minister Castro's son, Jamoki. The House discusses the comments amid a backlash from civil society. 5 persons, including a 10-year-old boy, were rescued at sea in a pre-dawn Coast Guard operation. Prime Minister Dean Barrow weighs in on the controversial use of gillnets. And 8 police officers are recognized for going beyond their call of duties in fighting crime. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
Signing up for Smart's broadband.
Good evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Friday, December 20th. I am Charlie Hutchinson. Fire and brimstone are pouring down on Jamoki Castro tonight. He is the son of UDP Minister Edmund Castro, and tonight he is feeling the wrath of not only the general public, but of powerful unions, political parties, elected parliamentarians, and of Prime Minister Dean Barrow himself. Great Belize Productions, Channel 5, has issued a statement saying, quote, "We have seen and read ugly comments on social media. The most recent by the son of a minister are vile and reprehensible. It is targeted at a woman and at a journalist. It should be condemned in the strongest terms by all Belizeans. Those in office who swore to uphold the law must take action to protect Pastor Wade and his wife and ensure that those who made the threats are made to face the law," unquote. Castro, in trying to offend Pastor Wade, targeted his wife Shasta on Facebook with threats of sexual assault. The vile comment posted by Castro comes after 16 days of activism and is widely viewed as promoting gender-based violence. In response, Shasta wrote on her Facebook page, quote, "I have listened to libelous and slanderous statements by UDP morning show hosts against my family and my children. I understand it comes with the territory. However, I think this is the first time I have been threatened with gang rape by a minister's son, and I refuse to believe that this can be justified away by another entitled brat's cabinet daddy," unquote. Castro, on the other hand, has said that he never said anything about rape and did not threaten anyone. However, the party he so vehemently defends on social media issued a release expressing, quote, "grave concern over a despicable and outrageous post made on social media in which the wife of a media personality was threatened with sexual assault," unquote. The UDP says that it expects the police to look urgently into this matter and will provide the required support if and when the family chooses to pursue the matter in the courts. The party says that there should be no place in the country for this kind of reprehensible behavior to find succor, and there certainly is no place within the UDP for this type of conduct. The matter was brought up in the House today.
More recently, a woman was attacked with the threat of rape on social media, which is terrible. It tells us, though, what is happening in our society, and we have to come together to regulate social media. We cannot continue to have these kinds of attacks on us.
We find it outrageous, despicable, nasty, and intolerable, Mr. Speaker, and it should be condemned by all of us in this House and by the society on a whole. Who does this young man believe that he is? That he's entitled to be able to write such nastiness against the wife of Pastor Lewis, and that he can get away with it? We just ended 16 days of activism. And now here we have this young man who works for the Belize Tax Service, who is paid by taxpayers, that he feels that he has every right to be able to write this type of nastiness on Facebook. We are paying his salary, Madam Speaker. We, the taxpayers.
I want to say to the Leader of the Opposition that we on this side of the House entirely share his sense of outrage, disgust, and revulsion. Our party has issued a statement this morning condemning that post out of hand. And I am happy to put on record in this House the fact that the members of government, the members of this administration, join with the larger party in saying that that kind of post is disgusting, entirely out of order, cannot be countenanced, and I repeat, must absolutely and in the most unqualified, unreserved terms be condemned.
There is much public outrage in the wake of revolting comments posted by Jamoke Castro on his social media page in which he threatens Plus TV's Shasta Wade with sexual violence. That disgusting remark is being condemned in every corner, including the Public Service Union, where the son of the Minister of Transport and National Emergency Management is a member. In a statement issued this afternoon, the PSU expresses zero tolerance against acts and threats of violence against women. The release also succeeds an interview with Minister Godwin Holtz, whose son Kenzel was arraigned earlier this week following an alleged domestic assault on the mother of his child in Belmopan. The threat of a gang rape to be carried out on the wife of Pastor Louis Wade is most reprehensible and has also raised the ire of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In its release, also issued today, the business community condemns gender-based violence in any and all forms, including the wanton threats made via social media. The Chamber joins all other bodies that have called for urgent and necessary amendments to existing laws to protect against all forms and threats of gender-based violence. The Christian Workers Union has also weighed in on the matter, expressing outrage and disgust by the vile comments made by Castro, stating, quote, that as a union representing women across the country, we find it necessary to implore those in authority to join in calling out this behavior for what it is. Our society is in peril, and accepting these types of distasteful profanity only serve to further degrade our moral fabric, unquote. Pastor Louis Wade and his wife have since contacted the police department, expressing concerns over the social media comments made by Jamoki Castro. Knowing that the comment was made by a public officer, the Wades have been advised to make a formal complaint to the Public Services Commission, since its regulations speak to the conduct of a public officer. But Commissioner of Police Chester Williams says that the department is in communication with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions to determine what charges, if any, can be levied in the absence of legislation on cybercrimes.
I was sent a Facebook post yesterday, which was made by an individual towards the wife of Mr. Wade, Pastor Wade. And I must say that I'm very much outrageous by the content of that post. If it is that the individual had a personal issue with Mr. Wade, then I believe that it should be between them. But to drag Mr. Wade's wife into the fray, I think is very unfair, and no woman should be subjected to reading something like that against her. And so I have discussed the matter with Mr. Wade in terms of his complaint and his wife, because they both made complaints. And I have also discussed the matter with the DPP, and we're looking to see what, if anything, can be done by law to address the situation. I believe that we need to make a stand and send a message to those persons who continuously using social media as the vehicle to attack or to threaten other individuals. So we will see, hopefully by the end of the day today, the DPP will get back to me on that matter. But let me say, for the time being though, that Mr. Wade have also been advised to make a complaint to the Public Service Commission, because under the Public Service Regulation, it speaks to the whole issue of the conduct of public officers, and the individual who made the comment is a public officer. And so I believe that there is something that the public service can do to be able to bring some remedy to Mr. Wade and his wife for the content of that post. So we will see how that is going to work out. I think at the very least, the Public Service Commission should be able to do something if we cannot find something under the law, because the law do make provision for threat to life and threat to damage property. But in terms of threat to raping a woman, that's where the gray area is.
Today, a press release surfaced on social media on cybercrime legislation. According to the release, the Office of the Special Envoy, in collaboration with the Office of the Speaker of the House, Ministry of Human Development, the Attorney General's Ministry, the Central Information Technology Office, the Ministry of National Security, and the Public Utilities Commission, are working together to formulate and/or amend national legislation to address the issue of cyberbullying in Belize. The release says that the first draft of the cybercrime legislation is currently under review by an interinstitutional technical group. The release ends by saying that the Ministry of National Security is looking at establishing a cyber unit, which Compol Chester Williams alluded to in his interview.
We are currently in the process of drafting, if not yet drafted, the cybercrime legislation. And so when that is passed, it will help us more in terms of dealing with the issue of cyberbullying and cybercrime. But in the time being, I will agree with you that while social media, particularly Facebook, was created with good intentions, it has now been used for purposes which I believe it was not intended for, where people are now using it to attack each other or to attack other persons.
The leaders of both parties today also spoke on the recent case of domestic abuse that led to police charging Kenzel Holtz with harm upon his ex-girlfriend Nicole Usher. Usher alleges that Holtz physically assaulted her and threatened her with a weapon. Leader of the opposition, John Briceño, says such barbaric behavior cannot be countenanced.
To make matters worse, we also have the son of another minister, Minister Godwin Holtz. What's his name? Hensel Holtz, Madam
With
Speaker.
respect, on a point of order, I don't think the second issue should be raised in this House because it is currently before the courts.
I think it's important for us to put this on record, Madam Speaker, or how we feel about this. We just had 16 days of activism, and I commend the wife of the Prime Minister, the Special Envoy for Women and Children, that condemned this action. Okay. So I believe it is important for us to say how outraged we are over this matter, Madam Speaker. And yes, it's a case about he said who and she said, but she's the one that has the marks around her neck. And this is not the first time that this young man is involved with pulling a gun at somebody else. It has happened before.
We got the point there, the opposition leader.
I am not sure if we've gotten this point, Madam
Yes,
Speaker.
we have. Yes, we have.
This kind of entitlement that they believe that they have should be condemned in the strongest of words. And you know what disappoints me about Minister Holtz, Madam Speaker? Somebody that we have looked at, you know, with such high moral standards, Madam Speaker. No, I need to say it, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, but you should be referring to the minister by his name. You can't, because that's in violation of the standing order. Don't call the minister's name.
Okay, the father that is involved.
Well,
the father that's involved. Not once did he condemn gender-based violence, Madam Speaker. It is irrelevant of who is involved.
But how does Compol Williams ensure that investigations centered on the children of politically appointed persons are not tainted? It is often speculated that those highly connected to government ministers are immune to criminal liability. In the most recent assault case involving Kenzel Holtz, the son of Minister Godwin Holtz, many questioned why firearm charges were not levied against the younger Holtz. Here's what the commissioner had to say.
As much as the public may not want to believe, that in the execution of my duties as commissioner, I do not get calls from ministers, or if they do call, I explain to them what the situation is, and they will understand, and we move on. I have not been told by anybody not to charge this one or not to charge that one. At the end of the day, the law governs all of us, regardless of who we are, and so I don't want anyone to think that because they are the son of a minister that they are immune from criminal liability, because that is not the case. Once the evidence is there, then we will ensure that we proceed in accordance with the law.
Sir, as it pertains to Mr. Holtz, some are of the view that he got off with a simple slap on the wrist amidst allegations that he used a firearm in this alleged offense. Were those allegations and those reports brought to you by the victim, and why is it, can you explain that firearm charges weren't levied against him?
Let me first and foremost say that the police do not work on public outcry. We work based on evidence. I have looked at the report itself, and let me say that in the first instance, it was Mr. Hulls who went to the police station first to lodge his complaint that the young girl had assaulted him. And while he was in the process of making his complaint, she came in and she made her complaint as well, that he assaulted her. So we have what we refer to as a cross complaint, right? And based on that, the police were directed to investigate. I spoke to the investigators, and we look at several factors. And based on how we see the investigation, there is not evidence to support the charge of aggravated assault with a firearm. Similarly, in relation to Mr. Hall's complaint that the young lady had assaulted him, there is no evidence to support that she assaulted him, hence she was not charged as well. So we, as a police, must be fair in conducting investigation.
According to our records, the murder count so far for 2019 is at 137 homicides. It is dangerously close to 2018's figures of 139 cases. The 2019 stats show that there were several incidents of multiple killings, including the 5 men murdered near Map Key, among other double and triple murders. With less than 2 weeks remaining in the year, News 5 asked Compol Chester Williams about the homicides, for which he says the majority were not gang-related.
We're still below last year's figure, and we are doing our best to ensure that we remain below last year's figure. It has been extremely challenging. We have had a number of silly murders. The truth is, the gang-related murders were what used to dominate the murder count. And this year, the gang-related murders are the lowest. And so we're seeing that most of the murders are occurring within the domestic setting, within the issue of alcohol continue to be one at the forefront, and drugs. And so those are things that the police have very little control over. Again, with these incidents with missing persons, most of the time when these persons go missing, they go with persons who are known to them, their friends. So again, it creates some challenge for us. So all I will say is that we're still below last year's figure, and we'll do our best to ensure we stay below last year's figure.
Coming up, Coast Guard rescues 5 at sea and averts a tragic Christmas for several families. 5 persons were successfully returned to shore at the Coast Guard headquarters this afternoon. The group, including a little boy, was stranded at sea when the vessel they were out fishing in began taking in water and capsized somewhere between Water Key and Goff's Key. It was a traumatic experience drifting out at sea in the dead of night. A distress call to the Coast Guard led to the location of the boaters sometime thereafter during a search and rescue operation. News 5's Asani Cayetano was at the Coast Guard pier when they were brought in.
The emotional reunion of several families with their loved ones at midday, following a night of intense fear that 5 persons, including a 10-year-old minor, were lost at sea somewhere off the coast of Belize City, was a collective sigh of relief for everyone involved in an overnight search and rescue effort.
It's not a nice feeling, losing someone very dear to you, as close as my nephew is, We always hear people getting lost at sea or getting killed and stuff, and it doesn't hit you that hard because of the situation Belize is in right now. But knowing that your nephew was not involved, he was just out fishing, and then he gone missing, and looking at my mom, looking at my sister, which is his mom, the devastation they were going through, it's very, very difficult.
On Thursday, a group of 5 set out to sea on a fishing trip, including Christopher Pariente, Christopher Zeng, boat Captain Michael Welch Jr., otherwise known as Fire, his 10-year-old son, and another individual known only as Chabo. It is not clear what they encountered at sea, but a distress call was placed to the Belize Coast Guard in the wee early hours of this morning.
Well, around 2:30 this morning, we received a call, a distress call, whereby we were informed that a boat had apparently experienced a distress out at sea in the area of Water Key and Goff Key. And the information was the boat was taking in water. We immediately deployed our standby crew to the area, and from there on we commenced searches.
Alberto Pariente and his siblings received a troubling phone call around 3 a.m. and immediately mobilized a search party to head out to the location where they were last seen.
We got the message like 3 o'clock this morning, and from since then we haven't slept, and we have been busy coordinating with the Coast Guard and the BDF defenders to do the search and rescue for us, no? And BDF was the Coast Guard was updating us as they go along, and we had also deployed some friends had deployed some boat to look in the Goff's Key and Water Key area, no? As that was the last message that we got, that was where they were located at 3 o'clock in the morning.
A concerted effort by the Belize Coast Guard, the Belize Defense Force Air Wing, and a civilian search party resulted in the successful rescue of all 5 boaters. Their conditions at the point of discovery is described by Lieutenant Roque Canol.
They're very weak, they seem dehydrated, and you're seeing the weather, so I must imagine that they're very, very cold at this point in time. No? So that's their health condition at this point in time.
Can you give us some operational details as to how this search rescue party set out?
The initial deployment was our standby, or who in any case would be the first search and rescue units that would be deployed in a case like this. Immediately after that, we look for another avenues. In this case, I got in contact with the Belize Port Authority to send, and I requested for them to send out a notice to mariners, because based on the information they received, we're looking at people floating out there.
But where exactly were the fishermen off to, and how did they end up adrift elsewhere? It's a question that Martin Pariente, a seasoned boatman, is yet to have answered.
They were supposed to be going right across there to the deepwater port to go and fish, no? So how they ended up in that area where they were found is kind of hard, puzzling, because like I said, we heard they were going there. So until I speak to my nephew, how is it that they got out there, then I will be a better understanding to then answer that question. No?
Reporting for News 5, I am Isana Cayetano.
Prime Minister Dean Barrow is optimistic about economic growth for the 4th quarter. Revised figures released by the Statistical Institute of Belize show that there was a contraction in the third quarter. According to the SIB, the percent change within the secondary sector, within which electricity production falls, was adjusted from a 4.5% rate of growth to a decrease of 10.8%. As a result, the total GDP for the quarter was also affected, going from a growth rate of 1.8% to a contraction of 0.4%. Prime Minister Dean Barrow says, however, that there was overall economic growth.
In terms of the textbook definition of a recession, but you do understand that in putting the 3 quarters together, there is growth. So we will have to fasten on to that for now, and I certainly believe that the last quarter will provide the kind of bump that will make sure that when we report next year, as soon as the figures are in, it will be clear that the recession has been passed through and is in the rearview mirror.
But how does that square away with the fact that the sugar crop, the saffron, is starting late due to drought conditions and other situations which they say the government can help with?
Government...
Relief to farmers specifically.
Well, we remember that we did come up with a package to try to help everybody who suffered from the drought, and I think there was some offer to farmers that they didn't find satisfactory. We are trying to go through the processes of getting the additional help externally that was promised to us. It's taking some time, but there it is. We don't control the situation in that regard. I still believe that overall there is going to be growth in the fourth quarter. We have to wait and see. I don't think I'll be proven wrong.
The Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry, along with the National Trade Union Congress of Belize and the Belize Network of NGOs, wrote to the Prime Minister reminding him of the commitment Belize made when it signed onto and ratified the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. The unions say that the implementation of UNCAC has stalled, and they want to know why PM Barrow says that the government will address the concerns raised.
As far as I understand, the targets, the official targets that were required to be met, have been met. There are more things to be done, and I think the Attorney General made the point that there is some hold up because of a lack of funds. But I have no doubt that indeed the complaint of the Chamber and the NTUCB will be addressed by the Attorney General and therefore the government.
The Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry is also asking the government for full details of the $133.2 million contract for the coastal road. The contract was awarded to Aimer Hernandez, the relative of former Deputy Prime Minister Gasper Vega. He has won several contracts with GOB, but the quality of his work is being questioned. According to the Prime Minister, the Chamber will receive all documents since there is nothing to hide.
And they will get their request fully and completely complied with. Look, let me just repeat, that particular contract was controlled by the British and by CDB. So there is nothing for the government to hide. So I've spoken to the president of the chamber, but I believe they might already have gotten the information that they asked for. There's nothing to hide.
A string of important pieces of legislation was passed today by the House of Representatives to meet a deadline imposed by the European Union. The bills were passed to get rid of the blacklisting by the EU, which placed Belize on the list in March, stating that Belize was a tax haven. The EU says that Belize has significant shortfalls when it comes to laws that favor tax evasion. With the legislation passed, the shortfalls are wiped out and the EU will recognize Belize as a cooperative jurisdiction. The passage of the bills was supported by both sides of the aisle.
There is a consultant, Mr. Wayne Snyder, who has been assisting us during the entire dialogue with the EU. And in fact, in terms of the drafting of the legislation the amendments that are required, and Mr. Snyder is going to be available to the House committee to which this and the other bills will be referred, and of course to Committee of the Whole in the event there are questions that members will have. I do know that Mr. Snyder has been in close contact with the leader of the opposition, and I believe the leader arranged for him to meet with the leader's caucus, so that I don't think that anyone can fairly claim to be blindsided. It is, of course, not the optimum situation that very, very important and very technical legislation like this one and the others should be passed all at once. But I'm afraid that the deadline that the EU imposed on us is such that we've been left with no choice. And therefore, I ask that this be taken through all its stages this day.
I met with Mr. Schneider a few times, along with members of the offshore practitioners, and they have gone through the proposed bills. And whilst they are not happy, but they understand that we don't really have much of an option.
It's that time of year once more, Christmas cheer. Prime Minister Dean Barrow confirmed that Christmas cheer monies have been dispersed to the 31 area representatives. Like the previous year, UDP area representatives received twice as much as PUP area representatives. PUP area representatives received $20,000, while the UDP area representatives received $40,000. It is an increase from last year, which puts the total figure to $1 million.
As we did last year, we tried to be both just and generous, but maybe just before generous. The UDP era reps got 40,000. Remember, this is not cash. You have to do your pro forma invoices and all that, and the opposition members got half. So 40 and 20.
After the break, PM Barrow weighs in on government's refusal to ban gillnet fishing. Prime Minister Dean Barrow today commented on the debate surrounding the banning of gillnets. Recently, Oceana Belize offered the government a gillnet buyback program if a ban on gillnets is first instituted. The government, however, has rejected the financial aid package and plans to phase out gillnets in 2 years with measures to ensure that livelihood security is a priority, especially for dependent communities. According to PM Barrow, the financial assistance that is being offered is not enough for a successful transition.
I had the sense that there is, in fact, a great deal of opposition from those that currently have licenses to use gillnets. And there was certainly the complaint, as I understand it, from the minister. Minister Mena is here, and he can tell you about the fishermen in his area in the south. There is a complaint that the money that Oceana, in fact, has been able to locate is simply not enough to have these people transition properly to a livelihood that will be at least equal in substance to what it is that they now enjoy. So it is the government's position, as you now know, that there is a moratorium, that the current license holders will be phased out, and that in fact, if more money can be raised, if sufficient money can be raised, where we can feel certain that in fact it is enough to take care of the livelihoods of those who would be dispossessed, then we would accelerate the coming ban. It is going to happen, but for now we're saying let's go with the moratorium while we try to phase things out and to look to see whether there can be additional gathering of resources.
It has been in the works for 9 years, but today amendments to the outdated Fisheries Bill were introduced in the House of Representatives. The bill contains stiffer penalties against violation of fisheries regulations. The bill seeks to properly address illegal, unreported, and regulated fishing activities as a matter of national priority. The bill provides for stiffer penalties. Representatives from various environmental groups were today present for the introduction of the bill.
The bill looks at modernizing fisheries. It brings in more transparency and accountability. It brings in the industry partners. It sets up an advisory board, an advisory council, which is really inclusive of the fishing industry and really bringing in fishers onto the table to advise the minister and the fisheries administrator. So there's a close relationship between the head of the fisheries department, the minister, and now a new body.
For protected areas managers, it is monumental because it puts teeth to a lot of the activities that we work with the fishers. And so being able to gather data, to look at ecosystem-based approach to management, to also looking at sustainable livelihoods and complementary livelihoods with fishers.
One of the important technology aspects of the bill is the using of electronic evidence within the prosecution of fisheries offences. And so it provides a very clear framework on how that electronic evidence can be introduced into the courtrooms. In addition to that, it also provides for the installation of mobile transmitter units, which are vessel monitoring systems, so that fishing vessels' activities can be tracked throughout the waters, and that brings both a management aspect and also a security at sea aspect for the fisher folk.
The bill itself provides the framework for overall enhancement of enforcement. I think that by no means just the government agencies are able to do all that enforcement. My colleague, as a co-manager, highlighted the contribution that co-managing organizations, co-managers, local NGOs in this country make to enforcement and to management of our fisheries and marine resources.
UDP Orange Walk North Area Representative Gasper Vega continues to absent himself from House meetings. He has been MIA from House sittings for a considerable amount of time after resigning from Cabinet. But indications are that he is making a comeback under the John Saldivar banner. He attended the UDP National Party Council meeting 2 weekends ago, but today he was absent once more. PM Dean Barrow was asked about it today.
Indeed, it is a fact that Honorable Vega has been absent for a while, but the rules of the House permit this to happen. It's not desirable, but it's not improper, and so I would leave it at that.
But he still receives his salary and perks.
He's a member, and if there is a violation of the House rules, he would lose his membership, but that point has not been reached. So he still is entitled to get paid, and yes, he is still getting paid.
So the opposition, or would you say that that specific line in the standing orders needs to be revised? Because it says that for him to be expelled or penalized, there must be a number of House sitting in a certain time, and that has never happened before.
What has never happened before?
That
Well, it won't
number.
happen because,
No, indeed, that practically speaking, it's almost impossible for it to happen. So I would agree that the standing orders in that respect ought to be revised.
When we come back, 8 officers of the law are recognized for exemplary police work.
Hope you guys are ready and pumped
Truly. With smart, come and be a part with truly unlimited. Smart, I love more for the same cause with truly unlimited. You know, see, I want me there from me, make the switch, me truly unlimited. Be truly unlimited. Be truly unlimited with smart.
A group of officers were invited to the Police Training Academy in Belmopan today, but it was not to develop their policing skills. In fact, they were being awarded for a job well done in executing their duties. It was a proud moment for the police department because the 8 officers ensured that even in the face of adversity, the perpetrators were caught. News 5's Dwayne Moody reports.
8 police officers were awarded today for going beyond the call of their respective duties to crack 4 cases in Orange Walk, Belize City, Belmopan, and the Placentia jurisdictions. The incidents ranged from gun violence to armed robberies and even murder. Commissioner of Police Chester Williams says that in executing their duties, these officers put their lives at risk because in all instances, guns were trained at them.
We have 2 officers from Placentia, 4 from Orange Walk, 1 from Belize City, and 1 from Belmopan, who were honored today for having gone above and beyond the call of duty. And I've always said that we must ensure that we recognize good work, the same way we do when our officers do bad, in terms of ensuring that they are dealt with. Equally, we must also be swift to recognize those who perform exceptionally well. And in every situation today, the officers put their lives on the line. In Placentia, the culprits that the officers caught pointed a gun at them. They were quick to draw and protect themselves. In Belize City, there was one constable, Mr. Young. He, again, was fired upon by the fleeing suspect, and thankfully he was not caught. He was able to continue pursuing the suspect, and the suspect was eventually caught and the firearm recovered.
Those officers are PC Raphael Callis and SP Sheldon Arzu, attached to the Placentia Police Substation, and PC Matthew Young from Belize City. 4 officers from the Orange Walk Police Formation, including its commander, Superintendent Juanita Cocum, received certificates as well. Cocum, along with Sergeant Freddie Heredia and Police Constables Amir Mo and Gasper Camara, had intercepted an aggravated incident in Guinea Grass Village. It led to the subsequent arraignment of the culprits. Superintendent Cocum says that the success so far had a lot to do with the community.
I cannot mention much because it's still it's before the court, right? But actually, we were returning from our mission, and at the same time, I was alerted of what had happened. So I just sprung into action along with the persons that were along with me. We speak a lot with my people, and they're along with me, and they have that confidence with me. And the community plays a big role in what we are doing. We embrace the community, and along with them, we get all kind of information from the community, and that is what keeps us going, the community.
In early December, William Danny Mason and 4 accused men were found guilty of the murder of Pastor Llewellyn Lucas, whose severed head was discovered in Mason's pickup. The murder occurred back in 2016, and 3 years later, a guilty ruling was handed down by Justice Antoinette Moore. The lead investigator in the case, now Sergeant Holly Vasquez, was honored for his impeccable work on the investigating file.
I also would like to thank the Commissioner of Police, who at the incept of this case, at its primary stage of investigating the matter, he had supported me overwhelmingly, and I must give him kudos to leave me on the case to investigate the matter. I also like to thank the DPP for also assisting me in the investigation and prosecuting the matter to get a successful conviction on this matter.
He was the lead investigator in that matter, and we believe that he did exceptionally well in putting together the investigative file, and that subsequently led to the conviction of Mr. Mason. So it is only fitting that we recognize the sergeant for the good work that he did during the course of that investigation.
Is there a promotion in line for this guy?
Well, you know that when the matter started, Mr. Vasquez was a corporal, and he's a sergeant now. So Mr. Vasquez recently got promotion late last year to the rank of sergeant. So he have gotten that promotion, and he's a very exceptional officer, I can say. He's very committed, very dedicated, and if he continue to perform his duty with that degree of zeal and courage, he will go a long way in the department. I can see that.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
Following today's awards ceremony, Sergeant Holly Vasquez, who was the lead investigator in the murder of Pastor Llewellyn Lucas, was asked about his reaction to the ruling handed down by Justice Antoinette Moore. Vasquez says that at times he was on edge, but he had support from the Lucas and Usher families, as well as Compo Chester Williams and the Director of Public Prosecution. He recounts how emotional he became at word of the guilty verdict.
It was a shocker for me because I knew we laid down the foundation for all the elements of murder, which is what the prosecution is there to prove. But there were some discrepancies because I know the defense tried to suggest to the judge that the DNA and other handling of the exhibits and so forth was not the proper way. So when the judge gave her decision and her ruling on it and said we did a professional job and commended us for it, it was a shocker for me. I break down in tears. I just didn't know how to compose myself, and it was a shocker for me. And I'm just so glad Belize got justice in this case. At the primary stage of the investigation, yes, I felt a bit nervous going into the investigation because we never know what could happen. An investigator might make a mistake and so forth. But I saw all the comments and I put that positive because the Lucas and the Usher family was there for me. They prayed for me every other day. They would come to the work and they pray with me. Defense attorney, like they rightly pointed out, is to point to the judge that my testimony is a lie. I am the investigator. I know what I did on the ground, so why would I go to the court and lie? And Madam DPP guided me. She said, Holly, just go to the court, said the truth. What you did, God will not take that away. The judge cannot take that away. They will listen to you.
I was intimately involved with the investigation. I provided some guidance to him with the assistance of Mr. Jones. And the DPP was always there when we come across something that we could not provide that advice. She was always there to ensure that we get the advice that we need to do the right things. And it was as a result of her guidance, along with us, that we're able to put together a proper investigative file and ensure that the matter was successfully prosecuted.
The Belize Peace Movement and Vision Inspired by the People VIP have brought a constitutional challenge against the government of Belize in relation to the electoral division, claiming that the 31 constituencies are disproportionate. During this morning's case management, the court issued deadlines for additional affidavits to be filed. In this case, there are a total of 10 claimants who are required to file affidavits explaining how their rights are being violated because of the disproportion in the constituencies. After today's court session, attorney Arthur Zaldivar is speaking with the media called out the elections and boundaries for, quote, undermining democracy, unquote.
Application has been filed, okay? A constitutional challenge has been made in its proper form. And the court is moving ahead in putting out case management orders to have the matter progress so that the issues can be ventilated. Now, what is taking place now, right? We have 10 claimants from different constituencies across the country, all of whom are saying our rights are violated. All 10 must present their version and how their rights are being particularly violated in the area where they are from. So far, 3 of those persons have filed their affidavits, which were included with the application itself. There are 7 outstanding. Those 7 will be put in place before the 13th of January. Okay? That basically covers all 10. Apart from that, the government now, in the form of the AG, has the responsibility to respond on the 27th, I believe it is. And once they respond, that response will take the form of the defense and also affidavits on their part. Thereafter, the court will reconvene and the process moves forward.
Deputy Solicitor General Samantha Matute Tucker is representing the Attorney General, and Attorney Arthur Saldivar is representing the Belize Peace Movement and VIP. The case was adjourned to February 6, 2020. Here's more from Attorney Arthur Saldivar.
We want just what the court can do, which is to ensure that the election and boundaries abide by their responsibility and duty imposed by the Constitution. We have seen in our country where the breakdown in law and order has taken place and what the effects have been. If there is anybody that is required to show respect for the law, it is the election and boundaries. The reason being, they are the ones to safeguard our system of governance, or democratic system of governance. And insofar as they're abdicating that role, they're undermining democracy. We don't need that, we don't want that, because we don't want to continue to go down the slippery slope that we're on in this country. So here's the deal, here's the reality of the situation. As it stands right now, we have constituencies in the city that are inordinately small. They are too small to be considered true constituencies.
Coming up after the break, Quality Poultry goes green with solar power.
Santa Claus is coming. Port of Belize Limited, a port with a global perspective.
Demand for renewable energy has skyrocketed in recent years, particularly because of the global discussion around climate change and the impacts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. The global attempt to shift from energy derived from fossil fuel to more clean and green sources has pushed countries to transition to clean energy economies. While Belize and the wider Caribbean region contribute less than 1% of the global emissions, there has been a move locally to explore renewable sources. Quality Poultry Products is one of the latest businesses to transition to clean power for its processing plant. On Thursday, we visited the headquarters in Spanish Lookout to find out more. Here's the story.
Almost 1,000 solar panels, 960 to be exact, cover the roof of the Quality Poultry Processing Plant and admin offices in Spanish Lookout. It's the co-op's way of transitioning into a renewable source of energy that's good for the environment.
Everyone knows the Distafui chicken thing, so we're trying to go with Distafui environment to try to activate that campaign a bit. And for us, hopefully, obviously we want to reduce the carbon footprint and so forth as best as we can for this company, and that's where the solar came into being.
The solar panels harness radiation from the sun and with the help of inverter technology, convert it to usable energy that the Quality Poultry Products uses as electricity. This solar power system has been installed for about a week. This monitor shows important information about the system, including a measure for its contribution to climate protection. That is, how much carbon dioxide has been avoided through the use of this clean energy source.
We decided on as you will see on the screen, on a 250 kW. It is definitely not or complete. We use more than that yet, but we decided let's start with this, just so we can get a feel of it and see if we can get the return that we're hoping for. It is probably a little bit over half. It is of half of what we use here, and I'm not so sure. Obviously the days make a difference if there's sun or rain, so forth, but it's between 50 and 75% of what we use here, so we still could technically put more if all goes well. They keep a record of up to year to date, and yes, it records, for example, the number that you're seeing there, that is just today. Each day gets recorded individually, so yes, at the end of the year or week or whatever, we can see where we stand with the CO2 avoidance and all of that sweet stuff.
Okay, so it's 5 or 2.6 pounds?
Right.
I'm seeing, just for today.
Just for today.
The cooperative's board discussed the idea of green energy for over a year. Barkman says that from the look of things, they will recover investments in just 3 years.
The way it looks right now, the payback should be very good. It's affordable. You see, this solar has also become a thing where the prices constantly went down. Like it's not like most other things. Solar's been going down, other things go up, right? So this seems to be a very feasible thing to do.
And the benefit to the environment is?
Of course, this Distafui environment, we have to protect it.
Right.
And I believe that is every company's job to do that as well.
What would you say to other companies out there who might be exploring it?
I would say you can't afford not to. That would be my advice.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
A Belize City woman claims that a next-door restaurant has been creating all sorts of problems for her. Nicole Milton lives on Cemetery Road, and she alleges that the smoke a restaurant is emitting is causing a thick layer of grease all over her house. She told News 5 that she has had to keep her house windows and doors closed 6 days out of the week. She alleges that the problem has been happening since 2017 and that the Public Health Department was slow in its response until she reached out to the department in Belmopan. She claims that the restaurant was ordered to stop cooking food until its smoke extractor system was fixed, but she claims that up to Wednesday they were still frying foods. Here's how she explains the problem she is facing.
All the grease to come in at my house, if you notice, miss, I got a lot of evidence and thing, right? I had a complaint to help about this 2017, the 8th of July. They won't come, miss. When they come, they go, nothing get done. When I open the house, the whole place gets smoky. The alone smoke, then they sicken me, miss. I don't have some issues already in the past, and it just make it worse for me. I don't change my curtain, miss, because every time I change the curtain, anything I open up the window, this is what happen. You know, the TV mess up. If I would have wiped the fan, no dust, nothing. But if I wipe the fan and I see the black grease come off there. And Sunday I could open up my house, really open up my house and wash miss, because the line greasy too. I got a cloth and where I wipe the line and with me side yard. And not supposed to work the kitchen area until they get the thing fixed or when they do. But they still work it, miss. They only supposed to sell liquor when I tired of it, miss. This is all I ask to make them please move that thing from there and put it on the other side of the building. That's all I want, miss. I tired.
On Thursday, we inquired about the matter with the Public Health Office in Belize City. They say that they've issued instructions to the restaurateur to install an extractor, and only until that is done they can continue cooking in the establishment. The Public Health says on Wednesday they visited the establishment to check if the kitchen was being used, but they didn't find any evidence of that. Earlier today, we also spoke with the owner of the building, David Montero. He told us that he didn't wish to give an interview, but that his tenants were not using the kitchen and were taking steps to address the problem. And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Charlie Hutchinson. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, have a happy and safe weekend. Good night.